The last part of chapter 17 and 18 has to do with social and cultural changes and America's society and culture changing. So, besides all the labor unions, besides the conflicts between big business and workers and all of that, we have tremendous changes. Number one is just urban growth. I mean, look at these cities. They're growing like mad because of just the rapid industrialization and urbanization that is happening. I mean, throughout the country. Just look at some of these cities, like, for example, New York, the the basically the place where you're getting an increase. I mean, my goodness gracious, Los Angeles, just tremendously large um, increases in urban growth. Okay, so and what's fueling this growth? Well, for example, by the 1880s, you're having 5.5 million immigrants, primarily from England and Northern Europe. And in the 1890s, you have about 4 million immigrants, primarily from China, Southern, and Eastern Europe. So, tremendous amounts of people coming into a culture where there's tremendous promise compared to where they live, but there's still some issues. There's going to be racism. There's going to be sanitation issues inside big cities. There's going to be animosity between racial groups too, and in some ways, the fact that these groups provide a cheap labor force means that these groups are going to, I mean, there's going to be oppression, okay, and all of that is to say we're going to have some issues. If we take a look at in New York City, for example, the kind of living situations that folks are going to be living in. This is what's called a dumbbell tenement. And here's the inside of one of them. And now this would be a typical living situation of an immigrant family coming into New York City. And the reason it's called a dumbbell tenement is because it looks sort of like a dumbbell, like a thing that you lift, kind of the weights on the outside and so on. But if you can imagine living and sharing a room, not a room, but I guess a hallway with 4 different groups of people. So here's one tenement building, or one tenement space. Here's another tenement space, another tenement space, and another tenement space, and a wash closet with bathrooms. The average Italian immigrant family had about 13 children. That's the average. So you can imagine that if you have all Italian families here with lots of kids, can you imagine sharing a bathroom with like 60 different people on one floor? Not having access to your own shower, not having access to your own tap water. What would that be like? I don't know. I can't imagine it. Maybe you can't either, but the living quarters would be cramped, they'd be dirty, they'd be ugly, they'd be nasty, they'd be ugh. So the living conditions are absolutely tremendously poor. You look at these pictures here of what a typical New York slum tenement might look like, just to give you an example of the dirtiness and the squalidness. Squalid is a good word to describe this. Squalid basically means that it's so far below a standard living condition that's it's just like none of us can imagine what these conditions are like. Look at this family. I mean, can you imagine sharing a small room with your family? I mean, what would that be like? I don't know. And you can see here why a lot of kids worked to try to support their families. I mean, to try to at least give the chance for a better life. But coming to America as an immigrant, it's going to be hard. Here's another picture. This isn't a family, but this is just a bunch of folks coming, a bunch of men actually just huddled together just for a place to basically sleep. Another picture of a struggling immigrant family. So these are all just pictures. Immigrants often formed ethnic neighborhoods where they could be um, connected to themselves and to gain strength together themselves. In New York City, which is the best example, and I could use Chicago too, even Fresno. But that's what immigrant communities do. They form communities. They form, with places with their own restaurants, places with their own churches, or places of worship, I should say. Sometimes with um, newspapers that are posted on the walls that are from the old country. But just to create opportunities for people to commune together, to be together. Chinatowns is another good example. There's Chinatowns sprouting up everywhere in the United States. There's always Chinatowns. You're going to have that. You're going to have Chinatowns in New York City, San Francisco, Chicago. It's another example of ethnic communities sprouting up. And so those are just some examples. The book has more information, of course, and if you watch the videos for this week, you'll definitely understand it more. So thank you, and use these questions. You don't have to do this assignment right here, but um, for this lecture, but just be thinking, because these may pop up on our document questions. So we'll see. Thank you.